I'm Wadsworth, Chair of the Albany Planning Board. We'll call the meeting to order at 6:32. And first order of business really is a moment of silence in remembrance of the victims of 9/11. Thank you. Grateful for us to have the opportunity to be here today, and I'm just going to turn it over to Maggie, Kelly Boyd, and Mark Dindorf of the Saco and Swift River Organization
Local Advisory
Committee, who are giving a presentation. So,
Awesome. Thank
Great.
you.
thank you.
Do you want me to lead off?
Yeah, please
Okay.
do.
Great. So, hi, I'm Mark Dindorf, and I'm the chair of the Saco and Swift Local Advisory Committee, and we are an entity that is part of the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services Lakes and Rivers Management Program. The committee itself is made up of appointed representatives from each municipality. Albany has 2 representatives, Robert Parrish and Kathy Carrier. And the committee's makeup extends from Hart's location at the headwaters of the Saco, Bartlett, Conway, Albany, Jackson, and Madison. And then also we have representatives from the White Mountain National Forest. The chief hydrologist for the White Mountain National Forest sits on the committee. And both the Saco and Swift rivers are designated rivers within the state's river protection program. And so as such, there are certain rules that affect permitting decisions that happen along the river corridors. And one of the things that the local advisory committee does is we provide local knowledge and insight on wetlands permits and alteration of terrain permits that come before the Wetlands Bureau at Department of Environmental Services. Ultimately, those are either approved or denied based upon the a DES reviewer, but the reviewers look to us to provide that local knowledge and insight that they may not have on any particular project. So when a shoreline permit happens, a wetlands permit, an alteration of terrain permit, we get a copy of those, and then we meet and discuss them, and then share our comments and concerns about them to the DES reviewer, who ultimately makes the final decisions. That's just one of the things that we do. Part of the charter of the Lakes and Rivers Management Program is a requirement that we create and then update and maintain a corridor management plan for each of the rivers. The last time this was done was in the 90s, and at that time there were 2 separate local advisory committees. There was the Saco Local Advisory Committee, and there was the Swift River Local Advisory Committee. So I think that the Saco was done in 93 and the Swift in 94. It might be the other way around, but anyway, it's been 30 years on both fronts. So while those documents still contain some relevant and useful information, they really were old enough that we had to start from scratch. And so what is a corridor management plan? It's a guidance document. And it's a guidance document that is based on a review of the values that the community holds about the river and the river corridor, as well as the threats to those values. And it's a resource assessment. It's a natural habitat inventory and assessment. It looks at zoning ordinances in all the different communities. One of the goals of the corridor management plan is for there to be more consistent guidance about permitting decisions and management decisions along the length of the entire river corridor in the state of New Hampshire, and not have it be widely disparate from one town to the next. So we're here to present to you as the planning board because you in particular have jurisdiction over zoning and zoning amendments, and it's oftentimes those areas that protections for the river corridor can be implemented through protective zoning. So this project has been funded by the State of New Hampshire Clean Water State Revolving Fund. Town of Hart's location applied for the funding in 2020, and we were awarded funding to both complete the corridor management plan as a multi-jurisdictional project, and also to complete some floodplain mapping that we were doing in Hart's location. And back at the time that we applied for and prior to receiving the grant, we did get letters of support from your select board for this project. So that's just sort of a big overview about the local advisory committee and what we do. The document, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it or not. It's a fairly sizable document. It's been 2 years in the makings. It's got lots of interesting graphics and tables and charts and information that we hope that you'll take a deeper look at if you haven't seen it already. We do have a website for the local advisory committee. It's sacoswift.org. And so on that website, you can both see the entirety of the corridor management plan, but you can also see some media that has centered around our efforts. So there was an article in the spring edition of the Mount Washington Valley Vibe that highlighted our efforts, as well as the community outreach survey that we did. Outside TV did a television interview with me about the project around the same time, and this is the 4th of 5 scheduled meetings that we have to the corridor communities. We did the Conway Planning Board in August. We recently met with the North Conway Water Precinct Commissioners, and tonight we're doing a double header. We presented in Hart's location at the select board meeting at 4:30, and then we're able to cut out of there just in time to be able to get here to talk to you all tonight at 6:30. And our last meeting after this will be to the Bartlett Planning Board on October 2nd. So what are the opportunities for you as a planning board to do with this document? Well, we hope that you'll choose to adopt it as a guidance document of reference. It's non-binding in its current state. But it still, provides recommendations for how, the river corridors can be managed, in a more consistent manner throughout the whole, from the headwaters to the main border, basically. There is an opportunity to consider adding it to your master plan. I know that Conway invited us to speak to them because they are updating their master plan and wanted to incorporate our work into that. You certainly have that opportunity as well, either to adopt it outright as part of your master plan or to include a reference to it in your master plan as a guidance document of reference. So, it's our goal that you'll take some time to look it over and understand it, and get a sense of what the greater Mount Washington Valley considers to be the values of greatest importance along the river corridor, as well as the threats that have been most immediately identified, and some suggestions on how to mitigate those threats and protect the amazing resource that our rivers and watersheds are. So that's a little bit of an overview. Maggie Kelly is our project manager on this project and can give you some additional specifics about the process of drafting the plan.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Mark. I had just a few slides here to kind of go over some of the key takeaways and some of the goals and threats that were identified throughout the whole planning process. Mark just kind of went over what the corridor management plan is itself, but the resource assessment and the ordinance and regulation review all kind of funneled into the identification of the various management concerns, threats, concerns that the local advisory committee has, and there was some community input as well. Just kind of as an overview, like high level, the Saco and Swift River region, they're two separate rivers. They definitely have some similarities and some differences. They are kind of unique in the state that they're so, there's the economic importance of the White Mountain region. There's a lot of local importance, as well as some really pristine habitats and high water quality in the area. So that's why these two rivers were kind of grouped together in part for this corridor management plan update. And the plan definitely has the challenge of balancing all these different resources and uses of the river, as well as thinking about how some of the management issues can be managed going forward. So Albany, is along the Swift River. There's definitely, regionally, I know you all are very familiar with the Saco as well, but Albany has the benefit of having several miles of the beautiful, critical wildlife habitat and cold water fishery that the Swift River holds. There's also quite a bit of recreational use on the Swift River along the Kancamagus, I know. We're definitely open to hearing any other thoughts you all have at the end here about what any concerns or important features of the Swift River to make sure they're kind of documented in this and something that can be used going forward. But when the local advisory committee identified management issues initially, some of the top ones were lack of local regulations in the corridor, lack of floodplain protections, flood and flow mitigation both during drought and flood conditions, as well as recreational overuse. And then kind of bringing in the threats that several of the committee members identified and some of the community members during the public survey. That also includes development pressure, water quality degradation, riverbank erosion, flooding, and building climate resiliency going forward. So those were all kind of taken into consideration based on the resource update that was done in this plan, as well as funneled into some of the goals of the plan. The goals are kind of two-pronged. Mark mentioned quite a few of them. There's the management goals, managing the resources of the Swift River, of the Saco River, with a particular focus on flooding, on recreational resources, and on the natural habitats that are featured along the river. The river corridor is, a very unique biological area, and also provides a ton of recreational opportunities. And then the second prong is the protection of those natural resources, protection of water quality, protection of in-stream flow, and building climate resiliency forward, thinking about how, for example, precipitation patterns might change, and how that might affect the flow of the river. So I did mention that we did a community survey back in the spring as we culminated, the end of the resource assessment phase. And there were about over 100 responses, a couple from Albany, as well as the other corridor towns that include, the ones Mark mentioned, Conway, Bartlett, and then participation was open to anyone that was visiting the area or it has a seasonal residence here as well. Again, we heard a lot of similar things. Recreational use and development concerns and pressures really came to the top. We'd definitely be curious to hear if that holds true for Albany, at our other town meetings. We've been talking quite a bit about recreational overuse. It differs a little between the Saco and the Swift, with the Swift having, maybe more watering holes and more white water as compared to some of the tubing on the Saco, but it definitely is a concern that we've heard again and again. And then, of course, flooding we've heard again and again as well, being quite a prevalent concern to impacting roads and how people get around, to impacting private property, and of course impacting habitat as well, if extensive flooding and movement of water and riverbank erosion is really washing downstream. So to get into Albany specifics a little bit, in 2021, a kind of high-level ordinance review was completed for all of the towns. I know Albany had a master plan update, I believe, as recent as 2014, not even 10 years old. And some of the identified challenges to Albany specifically were conservation of water resources, the stratified drift aquifer, that Albany is on top of, and continued working with the White Mountain National Forest. You know, and Albany's definitely not alone in that, like Hart's location where we just were, there's kind of a challenge between a lot of the town being within national forest and or state land in Hart's location's case, which on one hand, you know, provides really good management, and on the other hand, doesn't necessarily provide the town with as much jurisdiction and control over something as simple as roadside parking along a really high recreational area. So again, we'll definitely open it up to any comments or questions or concerns you all have. And then I can pass this around, but the corridor management plan also does provide some ordinance suggestions to, you know, even consider some suggested language for all the towns. For Albany specific, I did notice, it's not up here, but we did notice that there was in the previous master plan in 2014, it was mentioned that a 2-acre residential lot size could be potentially something the town might think about to protect natural resources in terms of ensuring enough room for septic and well drilling. And it didn't look like that was adopted, which maybe is something the town, it has been, which is phenomenal, which is really great. So that's like exactly the type of ordinance that we suggest that other towns consider. And it's definitely really nice to be able to look to your neighbors. We know Bartlett might be facing a similar question about how they can move forward with allowing sustainable development. So I'll pass this around for sure, and then we'll make sure you all have the link so you can peruse it at your own leisure as well. But in there is also an action plan that kind of goes into some of the specifics about how the local advisory committee can use the document moving forward. It definitely is a living document that can have addendums put on, can have updates done on a more regular basis than between the 1990s and now, if needed. But the action plan does include next steps, anything from managing development in the floodplain from a municipal standpoint, to managing stormwater, to building climate resiliency at a more regional level. And it does note that, the balance of municipal involvement in the corridor communities and in the watershed communities is definitely something that can support the local advisory committee as well moving forward. Mark, I don't know if you have anything to add here, but we definitely can open it up for any questions or comments that you all might have, and we definitely can take those over the next few weeks as well as we continue to wrap this project up once you all get a chance to look more at the document.
And I guess I would add to that by just saying that not only are we open to your commentary as town officials, as planning board members in that role, but also, as individuals that live within, the corridor communities, if you have personal concerns that maybe aren't quite, under the umbrella of your work as a planning board member, but you still have concerns about how the river corridor is managed, we're certainly welcome to hear those, and any comments that we receive both at this meeting and then up until we close the project at the end of next month. We'll go into an addendum on the final version of this report, so they'll be available for reference and to track. But any questions about our project or what we've done here, or any questions about its relevance to your work as a planning board, how you might be able to use this document moving forward when permitting decisions come your way. Like Hart's location, a lot of your town is in national forest, but you also have private lands that's both commercial and residentially zoned, if I'm not mistaken. So, once again, the goal here is to, try to treat the river corridor and the watershed as a single resource, and to manage it in a consistent way so that, again, it's not dramatically different when you cross the town line from Hart's location into Bartlett or Bartlett into Conway. You don't suddenly see entirely different circumstances along the river corridor just because you're in a different town. The goal is we have this really valuable resource that we rely upon for our drinking water and for recreation. It attracts people, to the region, so it's an economic driver as well. And we just want to make sure that we take some proactive steps to help ensure that it's available to be enjoyed the way we enjoy it now, for future generations. And that's really the opportunity that exists here, for all the corridor communities, but also for you here in Albany to acknowledge that you have this tremendous resource passing through your town, and as planning board members, in a sense, you're stewards of that resource, and that we'll hope you'll take some of our work to heart, and when it comes down to decisions that you might make in the future, both on individual permitting issues, but also sort of more global decisions about managing your zoning ordinances to be in more alignment with what the other towns are doing along the corridor. Yeah.
Do you have a break? So you said 1.5 miles of the SWIFT is in the town of Albany.
That's correct.
Do you know the breakdown of National Forest, town of Albany? Because we definitely have some property that Albany Town Forest. And then I was just curious.
I don't know off the top of my
Percentage
head.
or-
My guess would be about 60% to 75% national forest. Yeah.
And one thing I might not have described earlier, but what is a river corridor? So for the purposes of this plan and for the purposes of New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services designation, the river corridor is defined as a quarter mile from the center line of the river on both sides. And then also where a floodplain exists, it would incorporate whichever is further out. So if you have a big broad floodplain that extends more than a quarter mile from the center line of the river, the corridor would be at the outer boundary of that floodplain. And then where you don't have a floodplain, it would be a quarter mile from the center line. So
Does that move as the river moves?
It does, and certainly these rivers do move. The
Saco especially.
Saco more so than the Swift, but yeah, that's how the corridor is defined. And so when it comes to permitting review that we get, that also is defined by that distance from the center line of the river or from the floodplain.
And we don't have any Saco frontage.
No, I don't think so.
No.
The Swift, of course, is a tributary of the Saco and flows into it in Conway,
Yeah.
and so.
Yeah, and in the the open-ended answers of the community survey, I did notice that a few Albany residents did comment on the recreational use in the Saco, even though it's not within their town. So I know it's something everyone is familiar with, just being in this region.
So anything we do will affect mostly the moat view in the Pasco communities.
Yep, and then the little teeny things along the Swift, little
Yeah.
minuscule lots that are in the flood zone.
Yeah.
Okay, so those would be individual permitting decisions that might come across your desk, but, again, I referenced earlier that you also have an opportunity, when you're reevaluating your zoning ordinances to make sure they're, in line with what you want, for the management of the river corridor, that you can take a look at some of the suggestions that we've made. I think Maggie referenced that there's some recommended language for zoning ordinances where one town in the corridor might have stronger protections than others, a way to sort of help level that out so it is more consistent. And that would be something that you as a planning board could recommend, before your annual meeting and put on a warrant article if you were so inclined to do so. So,
And I had a question. So in our ordinances as it exists, at some point we adopted the Comprehensive Shorelands Protection Act, state,
yeah,
which I know includes lakes, but I think includes
The
the
rivers
larger
as well.
rivers too, right?
Yeah.
Any open moving body of water.
right.
It includes rivers above a certain class,
Above
which
certain
the
class. And these are
the
class
Swift certainly is.
1 or 2.
Yeah, I'm not sure off the top of my head.
I forget
but
which
they
way it goes,
are
if they're 1 or 4. I forget which one's the bigger.
I think the higher order.
Yeah.
But there are some tributaries that drain to it, which wouldn't necessarily have those protections, which can certainly be influential as well. Even, an example might be about shoreline vegetation clearing, which would fall under the New Hampshire's state regulations that you just referenced, but
Yeah.
might not be applicable to some of the smaller tributaries, but might be something.
So you might
within
have
your
a new property
jurisdiction.
owner who
Yeah.
moves into town and wants to cut all the trees along the river so they have a better view of it. And while you can understand that from that property owner's perspective, you can also understand the importance to the integrity of the shoreline to maintain some vegetation or riparian buffer, as it were, to help protect the riverbanks from erosion and help protect the connectivity of the habitats that exist along the river as well. So
And did you find in our ordinances, we also have a Swift River Conservation District?
Yes.
You found that already?
Yes, that was
Okay.
referenced in the ordinance review.
Okay.
and so I applaud
Is
you
that
for
updated?
having made those.
Yeah.
It's before any of our time.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, I applaud the foresight of your predecessors,
Your predecessors.
for doing that. And
Mhm.
I'll just give an example in Hart's location. For we received recently a shoreland permit from a property owner, who wanted to put a small structure, in the shoreline area, and so that first went to the New Hampshire DES as a shoreline permit waiver application, and then based upon the commentary from the local advisory committee and the decision of the reviewer, that shoreline permit was granted to the property owner, and it then came to the town to grant a building permit should we decide that that was appropriate and consistent with the spirit and language of our zoning ordinance. So that's partly how the process works.
Mhm. So given what we already have, those recommendations are on top of and exceeding what we already have.
Mhm.
I see.
Mhm.
Okay.
I'm curious if there. Oh, sorry, were you about to?
Well, I was just thinking, I was going to ask the question, what do you feel the biggest challenge is that the rivers face? I'd say tourism. The Swift, not so much because we don't have tubing as
No.
much as a Saco, of course,
Yeah.
but a few swimming spots along,
Mhm.
along the kink. But what do you, the biggest challenge that we could help was besides the shoreline, which I think we have pretty much a good grasp on
Mhm.
with what we have. I mean, what would you love to see?
Probably. I mean, I would say the biggest pressure the region is facing is development pressures. And I'd be curious to hear what that maybe has looked like in Albany in the past few years. But knowing that you have only a small portion of the town that's not within the White Mountain National Forest, I think that, it can have a big impact to have protections against, stormwater. Maybe that's green infrastructure, maybe that's low impact development requirements, maybe that's, open space requirements in certain areas. And I think that, even along the shoreline, the state protections, which you mentioned you had adopted, are certainly very influential. But even, stormwater anywhere else throughout the town can certainly carry pollutants. And, one thing that we brought up at another town was impervious surface and how, a sea of pavement, which, is certainly not how I would describe Albany, but the more, impervious surfaces there are that water flows over, that picks up pollutants and doesn't have a chance to infiltrate, cool off, that gets at that cold water fishery piece, which is helpful for fish and so many other aquatic organisms. And generally just like filter out anything from like winter road salt to, fertilizers that may be used in people's residential areas. So that's why there's a law under that development pressures umbrella, but I think the protections that can come from encouraging vegetation and buffers and managing stormwater are pretty powerful for protecting water quality.
And again, I referenced earlier just how fortunate we are to have the tremendous water quality that we have, and really, it behooves us to protect it not only for ourselves but also for future generations. And so it does cause you to take a look at what are the sources of pollutants getting into our waters. And what Maggie just referenced is often described as non-point source of pollution. So we're not talking about a pipe coming out of a factory, spewing effluent into the rivers, but we're talking about runoff that can be on the roads, in parking lots, on building surfaces, etc., that don't have the chance to infiltrate into the ground before it goes into the waters, and so that can cause turbidity, which is the water looks kind of murky and cloudy and all churned up, and then that sedimentation can create problems in terms of both water quality and also gumming up infrastructure that you may have. I don't know, Hart's location in Albany may have some similarities in terms of the amount of town roads. I don't know how many town roads you have, for example, but in Hart's location, we mostly have Route 302 running right through Crawford Notch. So New Hampshire DOT manages that. Obviously, New Hampshire DOT manages the Kankamagus Highway, but your town does have jurisdiction over any of your roads, and so you might want to keep in mind the goals of this corridor management plan whenever it comes time to look at stream crossings and whether or not it's appropriate to increase the size of a culvert or to basically design for more frequent storms, higher levels of precipitation, higher levels of runoff, that kind of thing, because those stream crossings can become real bottlenecks that can wash out your infrastructure. We had that happen in Hart's location after both of the recent hurricanes. The Hurricane Irene in 2011, and it wasn't actually a hurricane, but the storm, the Halloween storm in 2017. Which I know probably affected this area as well, but we had undersized culverts that caused the water to back up and run parallel to the road, and it completely undermined the road, and then it buckled up and collapsed, and so our highway was shut down for 3 or 4 days after each one of those events. So those are areas that have an impact on your community at large if your roads become impassable because you're not designing for climate resiliency, if you're not designing for more frequent flooding and heavier precipitation events, increased precipitation, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I have our zoning map up, and it just shows that really it's just residential. It's this last bit of, and it's zoned residential for Albany. So in terms of development pressures, it's just residential development pressure. It's not zoned for commercial.
And I guess I would say that that's good that you don't have commercial development pressure on the corridor, but I would say that we've all seen the impacts of the pandemic and the increased pressure on people relocating to our communities up here, and now that folks can work remotely, they don't have to be in bigger urban areas. They can work on the banks of the Swift River for a multinational corporation if they want to, and so there can continue to be, as we have an increase in population and increased mobility of the workforce. I think that there will definitely be continued pressure on recreational development as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's anything that you guys have discussed, but you mentioned road salt. Has there ever been a conversation with the DOT as far as like a reduced road salt area along the Kank, or is that?
Good question.
I just know, I think when we go into Maine, when you pass over the line.
Sure.
Right? I mean, there's also another part of it too, but they don't use road salt, or at least nearly as much. I don't know if it's budgeting or what it is, but they use much less. So I was just curious if
that's a great question, and I have not had a specific conversation with them about the Kankamagus for sure, but I will say one of the things about this plan is it kind of gives a building off point. It kind of opens those doors to talk more about it with the state and federal representatives that are in charge of or representing these areas. And I do know that chloride or road salt can have a really big impact on waterways. But I don't, off the top of my head, I don't know if they have a reduced policy for the Kankanagas.
I can add a couple of insights there. One is that on the private contractor level, the state actually has a fairly robust program where they have, green plowing certification, where they take private plow operators and offer them that certification so that they learn how to better manage their application of salt and other, snow and ice melting materials to help protect the waterways. But they also have the mandate at the core of their function, which is to keep our highways clear. And so we certainly see it in Crawford Notch, especially right by the very top of the headwaters. That steep pitch going up to the gateway in Crawford Notch. They heavily salt that, and I don't know whether that's going to change anytime soon. I know that some neighboring communities, I think it's Madison, has implemented the use of brining technology on their plows, and that is a currently available technology that does reduce the amount of road salt that goes into the water, because it requires much less of it to be effective in its application. It's just that you need to have a community or a state agency like the DOT that embraces the importance of that and wants to invest in the equipment to use that. And I don't know if you have much of a public works department or not.
So all of our plow people have taken that DES course. We had for like 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
Because it's beneficial in a lot of different ways, but it actually helps with insurance costs and all kinds of things like that. So we've been doing that, and then we do brine also. The town,
Great.
We
Oh,
brine
that's
our
great.
roads. So
Yeah.
yep.
So I applaud you for
Yeah.
all those initiatives, both the zoning initiatives that you referenced, Sean, and then taking those initiatives regarding road salt reduction and brining. I think it's the cumulative effect of a lot of small decisions and choices that are made that can have a big effect cumulatively on the water quality and the resiliency of the river, really.
Are there any other concerns you all are seeing about the Swift River or even the Saco River, that you think would be helpful to have documented in a report like this to be able to reference in the future?
We as a town, we have a 2 acre minimum. Are some parcels along this river that could be developed, but if they are, it's going to be minimal because the lots are pretty big. The biggest threat to the Swift River in Albany is the Kankanaga Highway in the south of it. That's in just the vehicles going over. I was in a meeting with the EPA one time, and they were talking about road infrastructure, and they said your highways are usually, in rural communities, are your biggest place where you can have environmental issues because of what's people trucking chemicals and whatnot through it. So between the salt and the products trucked over it, that's probably the biggest threat I would see that we would face for spilling and whatnot. But
We have the national forest, but we also have our own town forest that continue. So we don't have on the left side. We really don't have anything except for farmland, which I believe they take precautions also. They don't believe they use the pesticides that would bother anything, but they're pretty all green.
Yeah.
That's correct.
But
Yeah.
yeah. So I think the other side, the Passaconaway side, is the only place, and there's not a lot of room for development over there that I know. You can say small pieces, parts here and there, but I feel Albany is pretty on top of things like that. We're pretty proud of our town that we wouldn't let something get by us. These guys, we all live here. This is our playground, so we're gonna manage it. So I'm comfortable, but that's why I asked if there's something that we can do that we're missing. That's what I'd ask you people, let us know, because we'd be happy to add that to our arsenal of what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, I think other than some of the suggested ordinance language that we just urge you to take a look at and see whether or not it might be appropriate to, amend the zoning ordinance or to add an ordinance that you don't already have, so that it provides for that more consistent protections along the entire corridor. I would urge you to take a look at that. I think, the other component of this plan is it's really an educational document. We took a lot of time to inventory the resource and the values that people hold important, as well as to document, the wide variety of threats and potential threats that exist. And so some of it is just an eye-opener in terms of a broader awareness of the watershed and how we collectively as communities and, as a watershed corridor communities can help keep what we've got is a good thing going.
I'm glad to see you doing it.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of most of this, so it's good. It's refreshing to see that someone's taking this as serious as it should be taken.
Well, thank you. And it's been a big undertaking, a lot bigger than I really initially anticipated. But we've learned a lot along the way, and we've had a great team at FB Environmental to help us compile the document, and especially a lot of the graphics and the tables and charts and so forth that are in this plan. There's a lot of information in there.
So you have a presentation to go through as well?
This
Or
is the last slide.
This is the last slide. Can we just flip to the Albany recommendations and what are we actually not having? This is what I'm.
That's what I was
Kelly's
trying to
asking.
get. Yeah, if there's something we're missing.
I mean,
Yeah,
you're
that's what we-
saying update ordinances, but what actual language? What page was that on?
And I'm sorry, I haven't memorized the full plan yet.
Yeah, or our ordinances. Yeah.
Some suggestions in here are about the removal of native vegetation within shoreline setback areas. That would be a way to enhance what you already have.
Okay.
So an example would be, I don't know if you all are familiar with Japanese knotweed,
Oh yeah.
but for example, when that takes over shorelines, it messes up, to put it really simply, it messes up the natural biodiversity of the shoreline and is not as robust at holding soil in. So for example, if the landowner was to clear natural vegetation along the shoreline, Japanese knotweed grows in, a flood comes in, it knocks down the Japanese knotweed, it doesn't hold the roots in the ground, and that can increase riverbank erosion. So that would be an example of where native shoreline vegetation would be helpful. Promoting green buildings and low impact development. Maybe you already have some green infrastructure language, but that's somewhere, that's a little bit newer, so it's possible it's not in. But that is something that might be beneficial in terms of reducing impervious surfaces that landowners might be, if they were redeveloping, for example, might be interested in doing. So there's like some example language here that could be fed into an ordinance if, and adapted, it doesn't have to be one size fits all. Freeboard requiring structures to be elevated above projected flood levels. It's possible that's in there already, but that would be.
We have floodplain or.
There's
part of the
often
ordinance.
floodplain ordinances, and freeboard would be requiring new structures to be built above base flood elevation, typically.
So I think we have that.
You have that. Then there's the component of requiring, for new lots, requiring areas that are vulnerable to flood hazards and climate impacts to be removed from the total land area when you're determining the density that is allowed on a lot. And that one's, admittedly, a little bit tricky because there's floodplains. I don't know how old your floodplain maps are off the top of my head. Often they're quite outdated. Not you wouldn't be alone in that. But those are based on historical data, right? So changing flood patterns from some of these storms that have increased potential for precipitation, like Mark was mentioning, maybe that's a lot of rain falling within 2 to 4 hours, where usually it would be that amount of rain falling over the course of several days, can really change where flood hazard areas are. So in this case, maybe it would be working towards being able to, adequately remove flood hazard areas from future lot development. Yeah.
I just want to, do we have any lots that flood? Those little fishing, you know, the little teeny lots are the only ones I can think of that might.
Yeah, I've never known. I don't even know if we have a floodplain.
You
that
do.
is actively developed in any sense. I mean, we don't have like a Transville acres or
Right.
anything like
The
that.
field does, but.
The field,
The
but that's
fields,
not,
but
there's
no
no
houses
development
or
in it.
people.
Mhm.
Historically, no
The
one's
ones
had
on the-
washouts or anything.
Those ones on like, is that the one you're talking about on the?
The tiny little
The
fishing
Johnson-
camps
the
along
Johnson-
Swift.
the Johnson
Yeah,
development.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That doesn't, yeah, as far as you guys know.
I've never seen it.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
That'd be close.
Yeah.
It's close.
Yeah.
But if that floods, the covered bridge would be gone. So
Big as that.
yeah.
The other three on here are about requiring on-site retention and infiltration of stormwater. That would be like during the construction process. As well as, you know, a suggestion, an impact fee for funding natural resource conservation and climate resilience based on the amount of area that's being developed. Do you have something like that?
No, again, these are like, if we had a lot of land that was maybe developable, they make more sense.
Mhm.
But the
I hear
the
you.
amount of actual acreage is that hasn't been developed yet. That could be. It's got to be minuscule. I mean, like,
Yeah.
are there any lots on the river that actually haven't
Well, if
been
you're
developed?
talking, are you talking within the floodplain, or you're talking within the corridor, that's a quarter acre, so that stretches out a little bit, but still maybe not.
Yes, and the quarter acre and the half. I mean, there's just.
Yeah.
But,
My initial sense is there's not
yeah,
either lots already have been developed or they just. I don't know. I guess
quarter mile on that, quarter mile.
Yeah. I guess it comes a little bit to thinking about redevelopment too,
Redevelopment,
knowing that Albany is probably a desirable place to live,
Mhm.
given its
And waterfront's waterfront.
waterfront's waterfront. So things to consider.
Yeah.
But I definitely hear you that there's not a lot of land within the town that's not within the national forest,
It's very small.
specifically along the Swift.
Yeah.
You know, another thing that came up in a more general context is consideration of you know, a recommendation or even a requirement that septic systems be maintained and pumped out, you know, on a regular basis, so that you're not having you know, failed septic systems that are then infiltrating into the watersheds as well. And I think, you know, we might be seeing more of that, you know, on a regional or state level at some point in the future, but it's something that individual towns could consider as well. I mean, the state the state regulates wastewater treatment, you know, in terms of septic permit, design permits and construction and certificates to operate, but once it's in the ground, you know, nobody's really paying attention until it fails and somebody notices and does something about it. But you know, there is a preventative maintenance thing that we all can do, which is to pump our septic systems on a regular basis. And the town, if it should choose to, you know, could choose to, you know, have a schedule of that, or to have a recommended schedule of that. I don't know exactly how you would do it, but
Yeah, usually it's every 3 to 5 years. Those are often suggestions we have for some New Hampshire towns, but they're few and far between the towns that actually do it.
Yeah.
But it's also, you know, I don't know how much you have a seasonal residence, but there's a difference between a 3-bedroom house that has a 3-bedroom septic that is used, you know, throughout the year, or used really heavily for 2 months during the summer, and maybe it can't accommodate heavy use during that time. So that's where the pump out ordinance can also be helpful for some towns.
It looks like there's like 80 acres along the Passaconaway where it could be developed.
Got the farmland too.
Marshall Farm. Yeah.
Right, and you all probably have a good handle on whether, you know, those could be or unlikely to be developed, but thinking about, you know, some of these things are thinking about protections for the future should they be chosen to be developed.
So, I have a question for you. Do you have site plan review for residential development? Does it come before your planning board, or does it just go to the Board of Selectmen to make the decision on granting a building permit?
Yes.
Yeah.
Commercial site plan review only. But
Yeah.
not for residential.
Yeah.
In subdivision also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you have a selectman's representative on the planning board? That's you? Yeah, great. So, I guess I would just urge you to share, with your fellow selectmen the work that we've done, so that they can be aware of it, have them, show them the link to the plan so that they can see it, and to keep sort of the general guidance document elements of this plan in mind when you are making permitting decisions regarding building permits along River Corridor.
I'll forward that email that I got from you. That's all that
Fantastic.
information, so.
And unfortunately, we didn't have the funding to be able to present to all of the different boards within a town, so we opted to present to the planning boards for the most part because you're.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
It's not, selectmen don't have a lot of oversight over that.
right.
Till it's too late, then we get,
Yeah,
then we gotta make
Yeah.
decisions, but
yeah.
up until then, no.
Well, we appreciate having you as a
Yeah.
partner in this process, and appreciate you being open to reading and learning from the work that we've done, and absorbing some of the information that's in there, and working together to protect the resource, because we're certainly blessed to have it, and I think we all live here because of that. So appreciate your partnership in that level.
Agreed. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you all for your time today.
Yes.
Great. And if you have any questions, Sean knows how to reach me. You can also, as I mentioned, go to the southwestswift.org website. My email address is on there, so you can reach out to me directly with any follow-up questions or comments, especially anything that you might like us to add as commentary, for the addendums in this plan would be great.
Yeah.
So thanks very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
pleasure.
Thank
Yes, thank you.
Nice to see you back.
Nice to meet you, Mark.
Good to see you, Sean.
Yeah, good to see you. Sounds like good work.
That's been quite a project.
Yeah.
Learned a lot.
So is the corridor plan is complete? It is complete, and you are presenting it.
We are presenting it. The only thing that is not in it, that will be, is the commentary from these meetings. So basically, we're accumulating comments and questions that come from these meetings, and that'll all be on the addendum table at the end.
Awesome. All right.
Again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
And also,
And
and can I ask who you're recording for? Or you
Valley
record
Vision.
for Valley Vision? So if we wanted to get access to this recording, would it be available?
Yeah, you can just email Valley Vision and they can send you a copy.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Nice.
Have a good
Thank
night all.
you. Good night. Hi, Kathy.
Hi. Sorry I'm late.
Glad you're here. The rest of it's just Albany Planning Board stuff, so up to
Okay.
you. Yeah. We're gonna do minutes and a few things, and
All right.
as you like.
Good. Like I said, sorry I was late.
Yeah.
Just blew into town and family stuff.
Yeah.
So, all right, I will definitely read the minutes and look at Valley Vision, and
Yeah.
I just wanted to be that second pair of eyes
Yes.
from Conservation Commission.
Conservation Commission. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we could make sure we're all on the same page and various entities of the town government are talking to one another and know what's going on.
Yeah. It makes all the difference.
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
I think we're far ahead of most towns. I'm pretty,
Yeah.
well, I'm proud of the town for everything that, we get the most beautiful part of the river, I think. So
Yeah,
the Saco, not so much. Who knows what's dumping into that, so
Right.
I think they got their hands full, so I know they're working on it too.
yeah,
And, we're in a good spot, I think.
yeah, well, I just like to.
Just keep it there.
Keep
Just
it
gonna
there,
keep it there.
exactly, keep it there.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. See you guys later.
All right.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Yep.
You looking for a job?
I heard a rumor.
That's not a rumor.
Well, and I thought about, just filling in,
Yeah.
except it's a perfect
You
opportunity.
might love it so much you'll stay.
No, not again, not round 3.
I know. But if we need a fill-in, maybe you'd be willing to
Well,
do
and
that.
I thought it's a perfect opportunity for somebody who's never been a selectman to kind of get their feet wet and then,
Yeah, but
you
budget
know,
time is a
give
good
up.
time to learn.
well, that's what I'm thinking too.
Yeah.
Budget time is,
Yeah, Need
when
some
you're the
all
bus-
hands on deck.
yeah, you're the busiest, so
Yeah.
I'll stay in touch.
Keep it in mind. Good night.
Good night. All right. Let's do minutes quick. July 10th minutes. I can pull them up if anyone wants, or is that helpful?
Yeah, I don't have them. I don't know if I was at the last one.
July 10th and August 14th. All right. Myself, Morris, Curtis, Brian were here. Kelly, you were not. We had public comment for preliminary consultation for minor subdivision. Julie and William Hunt. That was about it. So this is the July 10th minutes. Anyone got a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. The July 10th. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye.
it.
Kelly abstained. And then it was August. Come on. 14th. Oh, August 14th meeting canceled. Yes. So we do not have that. Here we are in September. Let's see. This next thing, Kelly just gave me a heads up that map 6, lot 30, the old town hall sub shop. I don't know. Somebody has an idea about how to use that. It's not really our business yet, so we don't need to address it. But it's more of a something may be happening there. Select board report.
We have an opening.
Yes.
October 3rd is Jen's last day, so we're putting it out in the paper. I don't know if it's gone in or not. Look for anyone interested, and they're asking that they write a paragraph on why they want to do it, and we'll take on all takers and make a decision. So if you know anyone interested in getting their feet wet in politics, it's a good first step. The only other thing going on is we're still active with the Route 16 upgrade. We're trying to schedule another public meeting. Trying to do one in September, but September's just fading away, so it'll be in October. Just to kind of give the next step on all the input that was given at the first public meeting. They took into account, and they're trying to modify and change to make $9 million realistically 14 million. So they're trying to adjust maybe the length of the corridor, switch it one way or another. There's talk of breaking them into 3 sections, and whichever we feel, and it will come down to us, with the most input. Not that we're going to make the decision, but what we feel is the most impacted area, safe wise, to improve its safety.
So I was typing and I missed a bit. The state, we had the meeting.
Yes,
There's going to be
another one,
and it's not no date yet.
No date yet.
But generally next summer. Or?
No, we should be having one in the next month.
Okay.
I think they have to. I think it's part of their program is that they have these. There'll be another one next summer. But this is the second half of the first one that we all attended. This is them giving their feedback on what we told them, what we thought were the problems. So they have a lot of ideas, and they are working on it. I mean, I'm talking to these people, and it's not that it's not a lot of talk. They are trying to accomplish something. So it's a big deal. But it's a money thing. It's a 10-year project with a 10-year price tag. They do adjust some for current conditions, but.
And what is the 10-year project?
The full corridor, the Albany corridor.
The examination of
from Tamworth to Madison.
Mm-hmm.
Originally, it was widened and take and fix the view, for safety, and rumble strips. Rumble strips can go. We can talk about that. There's not a lot of happy people about rumble strips. So, but with the outcry from the people on speed, we're working on that, which is a very tough obstacle to overcome. So they're trying to find ways to implement changes to the area to give a visual effect to cause people to slow down or to make it safer for line of sight. So they've got a lot of idea. Roundabouts were thrown in there.
Yeah.
When we heard that, we kind of all jumped up and down, but a roundabout slows people down. You see one coming, but I don't think it's a worthwhile. We'll have the discussion, but I don't think people will be jumping up and down about that. But turning lanes are another thing.
Yeah.
Widening the road enough to put a turning lane in for certain areas that could use it. So a lot of ideas, but every time an idea, it's another $1 million, $2 million. It's just they don't have the money. So.
And what is speed? Just speak more about speed. You're talking about speed reduction.
It's 50 miles per hour through Albany.
The whole way?
The whole way. Till you get down to 113. Mm-hmm. After that, it goes to 40, I believe. So, 50 means 60. Right. 50 means 65. Yeah. So, in our small area, especially because I live on Route 16, it's very dangerous. Mostly because people aren't paying attention, and rear end accidents are prominent, I feel. Mm-hmm. So how to fix that? The way right now, the way they set up speed limit is they go by the traveled speed that's being used. Whether it's the right speed limit right now, if they're driving 50 and no one's getting in an accident and everything seems safe, they set it at 50. There's no math to it. There's no formula. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to change that. So there's a different formula to do it. That we're saying, yeah, you can drive that fast, but one big accident's coming, and we've had them. So we're trying to not let that happen. And it's a lot of red tape, you call it, but that's what we're trying to do. And maybe 50 is appropriate when they do all these upgrades to the road. I don't feel it, but yeah. So the town residents made it very clear that speed was the big issue. So we're trying to find some way of having that happen through signage. Doesn't work, they say. We'll definitely use it, but the only way is to give the perception that there's a reason to slow down. And that's what we're trying to. That's the approach I'm taking to it. Yeah. Because I'm the representative with the state. So turning lanes, more reasons for people to think, oh, I better slow down here. And this, right now it's kind of a free for all.
And for speed, what about if, as the town kind of collectively was saying, it's too fast and too dangerous?
Doesn't matter.
If the town, say at town meeting, voted to say we're gonna send a letter from the town collectively at town hall saying we want the speed lowered, how would that?
From what I understand, it's not the way it works. And we can do, and I've thought of that too. A public outcry, really go right to the governor and say, look what they did in Tamworth. They raised the speed limit from 35 to 40, and Tamworth jumped up and down for a while. Uh-huh. But that's not how it works, because every town would do it, and the state would come to a standstill because they'd be crawling. So they have their way of doing it. At some point, I'm hoping at the next public meeting we can have the actual person that does the speed limits. It's one guy. He's new. I think they got a new guy now, but everyone's heard about the meeting we had. We had a great successful meeting. A lot of people showed up. So that was bigger than what they expected. Yeah. So we'll get the information out ahead of time so everyone has their thoughts, and we'll try to do it again.
It's coming in a month or two.
Yeah, like I said, it should have been happening. Yeah. It's been a busy summer with storms and rain, and the state's dealing with that too. Yeah. The second half is the 113 intersection that is also a hot spot. Yeah. Which what I'm doing is trying to make that a whole separate project.
Yeah.
So that it doesn't take any money away from what we're trying to do up here. So there's a lot going on. They say 10 years, but realistically, there won't be shoveling the ground until 2027.
Mm-hmm.
So it's still a few years out.
Yeah.
But it's time to start the fire.
Yes,
And,
agree.
So that's what's going on. Yeah.
Excuse me, Sean,
Yes.
your back light inside
Oh.
the car on, is that okay?
Thank you.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Kathy. It's a short walk. And I just wanted to add in, as far as that goes with the state and the highways, it's the same thing you were saying, Curtis, that regulatory agencies, and you've heard before that it's the most vulnerable part of our town is the highway, right? And it just seems straight up intuitive that lowering the speed limit is going to make it safer for the people and for, right? It's not just, you can have people die in accidents, you can also have trucks full of whatever smash and dump whatever they carry, right? And so, like, yeah, we are fairly well protected because of the national forest and because of our ordinances. Route 16 is our biggest vulnerability in terms of human safety and health and safety of the environment around it. It's like,
We have changed the sheriff's schedule. They may have noticed they're on 16 more.
yeah.
Yeah, and we did increase their budget to do that.
Yeah.
Doing what they've always done, but add more shifts to watch 16. Working or not, I noticed they're pulling people over too, or they're ticketing or not ticketing. At least we're getting the image that we'll keep paying attention to it. That's one part of it.
One part, yeah.
So, again, people are gonna drive how they feel safe. So if the road lets them drive 50 and the state puts out a speed, whatever they call it, when they put the wire across the road. What's it? A speed count? I don't know what it is, but they will monitor the speeds.
Yeah.
And if they're doing 60 and everything's fine, all of a sudden the speed limit's 60. Because that's what the road can hold. So that's just kind of the way they do it. So right now 50 is what they feel safe is.
Yeah.
Rumble strips too, anybody that lives a half mile from that road's gonna hear it. I mean, they put them in Alton and they took them all out, they paved them all in, they paved them because it was so loud.
I don't think it's been proven that they do anything in there.
Yeah, I don't think
it's
so.
the
I think
safety.
the speed would be the,
Yeah.
but we'll see.
Yeah, we're working on it. We're taking it serious.
Thank you.
Best we can. I almost die every day turning in my driveway.
Same.
It's just not right.
Yeah.
My road rage can't handle it at this point. I don't know what's gonna. Because then people will beep at me turning in my driveway.
Yeah.
Stop, and they get right up on me, thinking, "What's this guy doing turning in my driveway?"
Yeah.
But that's who we deal with.
All right. The other thing, I put this under select board report. It's not part of your report, but code enforcement, just wanted to put that out there again as
Yeah.
Here we are with the planning board setting the regulations. What are the regulations worth if there's no
Yeah.
way to follow up on them? And
That's
to me, that is,
Yeah.
you gotta have both. Just like saying with the sheriff monitoring 16,
Right. Right.
So whether,
Yeah.
we're a small town and keep costs low, some part-time, something, but
It's been talked about it, maybe not as much as we should, but unfortunately we're getting close to that point. I don't like it just because
It's
like
one-
Curtis, I've been here not as long as Curtis, but I've been here 30 years and all of a sudden something changes where someone's keeping a watchful eye over you. Not that I'm ever doing anything wrong, but it feels different. It gives a different feel to the town that we got to go out and police people. But we are right there. But that would be a matter of appropriating the money to pay for someone to do that.
yeah.
And we don't have anyone right now in mind, so
We don't
I'm sure we can find somebody.
And I feel that the town's pretty vulnerable without it.
Yeah.
Just in that you get a complaint about one property, and then if you get a complaint, then the select board's obliged to look into the complaint, and then it's picking and choosing, and that.
Ideally, you
That's
borrow
nice.
someone from another town.
Yeah.
Who's already doing it.
Doing
so
it.
that's where we would look, and we did talk about it. So I can present that to the other two and tell them that.
This is me.
Yeah.
Open to discussion. That,
There's nothing wrong with code. I'm not saying anything wrong with it. Just I hate to see our little town grow up to where we have to put these things in place. But I also do see people trying to shortcut, do things different. So.
I agree. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Old business, new members. This goes to, so
Yeah.
when you put that ad in, you put planning board in there
Yeah.
and zoning board.
Yeah.
All of the board, every single board is short.
We need everyone.
We are just barely.
Yeah.
We don't have any alternates, so we should have 2 alternates.
Yeah,
Zoning board is not functioning actually. It's like if there were a zoning board meeting right now, I don't think there's actually a full membership.
I don't know if she's done it yet, but I'll find out, see if she can add a tag
Add
on
those
to
in.
that.
And then at the bottom here, I don't want to do this tonight, but I was thinking we've had a few, just very quiet meetings. We're not having a lot happening, right? Last year we had some site plan reviews and this and that. It's been pretty quiet, and I think it might behoove us to just read through our ordinances. Maybe just say, if it's a quiet meeting and there's not much on the agenda, we take 30 minutes to just read through it. Then we're like educating ourselves and can have a bit of discussion of if we think this, whatever that chunk we just read, is the appropriate thing for Albany right now. So I am proposing that as something we do in the absence of other business that needs our attention on a given meeting, not tonight.
As much as I love to get that email saying there's nothing going on and take the night off,
Yeah,
it was mentioned to me that it is a requirement.
It is a
to have
requirement.
monthly meeting.
that's right.
That's something that the town administrator mentioned to me. So I've never read it, but it kind of makes sense.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, and we've never canceled because, we had to cancel because of a quorum problem.
Yes.
I don't think we've ever.
Yeah, I guess I just take it that way that it's good to have a night off. But you're right.
Yeah, I
You
think
can't
we
get
struggled
people
with,
together.
we didn't have enough people.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Which again goes back to needing a few more people. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. All right. That's it for me. Anyone have anything else to add?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
As a homeowner,
Yeah.
I'm doing a farm. Do I need to do anything through this board to do that? Before I haven't started yet, but
Yeah.
I'm just gonna I got some beehives, and I'm gonna sell some honey. It's not a farm.
Yeah.
But I am registered with the state as a farm.
I need to read through it, but I'm pretty sure, are you doing a home business
Yes.
or home occupation?
Yeah.
I don't think you come before the planning board for home business or home occupation. I think you
I
just
think you're registered with the state.
register
Yeah.
as a home and notify the town home business, home occupation. But you don't
I don't have to. ask
before us
permission or-
unless you're having employees.
Yeah.
So if you're not having employees, then no.
No.
If you're having employees, then it goes beyond a home business and becomes site
Yeah.
plan review.
No, I'm not there. So I just didn't wanna do anything wrong.
Your wife's not your employee?
No, I'm an employee, not well paid. Do you get your employee if you don't get paid?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.